Kasey, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you today.
Thanks, Brian. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. I've been following your journey on Twitter or X or whatever they're going to
Yeah.
call it going forward. And I really enjoy what you're doing. I enjoy the journey you're sharing. I enjoy, how you're kind of sharing how you're growing your business out openly, kind of the
Yeah.
struggles you've been through and stuff. Excuse me. So it's really important, I think, especially with this whole just get started mission I've had for a lot of years, is sharing these stories of people that may not be, they're not Elon Musk, they're not out there, widely around the world, but you have a very compelling story to share. So I want to bring you on
Yeah.
and chat through that a little bit. There's a lot of areas we're going to go today. I'm excited. I wanted to start though. Can we start in February of 2020? Does that month ring a bell? You're smiling a little bit.
Yeah, it does. It does ring a bell.
Yeah,
That was a big aha in my journey.
yeah. And I thought that might be a good place to start because
Yeah.
as we go through our journeys, whether we're just starting or maybe we're in a point to change, we have to kind of sometimes we have these epiphanies that happen. So can you share a little bit about February 2020 to kick us off?
Totally. And I'll be clear, like most of my ahas, I don't know if I'm like a particularly stubborn human being, but my ahas are usually really hard won lessons, and I learn things very much the hard way. And that's a big part of why I share my story online is I hope that by doing that, I can maybe make people feel a little less alone when they're going through something like that, or help people avoid some of the mistakes that I made in my journey. And February 2020 was a really big one for me because at the time I was running an agency. I had started my business. I started my business in like fall of 2017. And it started as kind of doing marketing strategy for early stage startups. And really quickly, I kept getting advice from people that if I really wanted to grow and I really wanted to scale my business, I should start an agency. And at the same time, I was getting clients saying, "Hey, the strategy you're helping us work through is amazing, but can you help us with execution?" And I thought, yeah, of course, I'll build this agency and we'll grow that way. February 2020 was the big aha because all of a sudden I developed severe vertigo. And I mean, imagine the worst like drunk spins you've ever had in your life, but while stone cold sober and 24 hours a day. I mean, I have this really vivid memory of lying in my bed looking at the light above my bed, and the light would move to the right and then come back to that spot, move to the like I couldn't even focus on things. And the vertigo was so bad. And it wasn't, I don't know, there's different kinds of vertigo. It wasn't just that I was like sort of, nauseous and woozy. It was like my eyes literally couldn't focus on things. So PS, I couldn't really focus on a computer screen. And that's, 90% of what I did. And it was so bad that they tested me for a brain tumor. They thought that was what it was going to be. Turns out it was just a viral ear infection. And there's no treatment for a viral ear infection, just rest, which at the time I was like, I don't have time for this. And after, I don't know, maybe like a week, I went and saw a naturopath who I'd been seeing for a while, because I also have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease. And I was talking to her and she's like, "Kasey, why now?" I was like, "What are you talking about? Why now? It's an ear infection." I'm like, I don't know. And she goes, "No. This is stress. What's going on? Why now?" And without thinking, I burst into tears and exclaimed out loud, "I hate my job," without thinking at all. And all of a sudden it sort of dawned on me. I was like, oh no, one, this is burnout. And two, this is because I have built a business doing something that I don't like. And I'm not very good at, right? I got into my business. What motivated me was working with founders and kind of early stage teams on big strategic initiatives and things that really drove revenue. But to be successful in an agency, you want clients for as long as possible. And that means you're not going to be doing strategy most of the time. You're going to be doing kind of menial execution of stuff. And that was the stuff that I hated about marketing. And it also meant that I was working less and less often with the founders and more with their teams. And I mean, I kind of hated every single part of it. And so I remember sitting in my bed that night after I'd had that conversation with my naturopath. And I was so, I mean, I felt like I had had the wind just knocked out of me. And I remember sitting up in bed and I had my journal on my lap. And I remember asking myself, okay, like I hate this. I'm not happy. What if I just did something else? And I remember just asking that question. I felt this immediate wave of relief. Because my first instinct was like, well, I have no option. This is what I'm doing. And just asking the question of like, okay, what would I do if I didn't do this? And that was the start of completely changing my business. I wound up, laying off my whole team. Although, COVID literally happened a month later. So I probably should have used that as an excuse, but I felt a sense of loyalty to them. So we kept kind of plugging along for a while. It took a while for me to really commit to trying to do something really different. But it's been over these last few years that I've completely reshaped my business into something that serves me and makes me happy and is much more sort of purpose driven and aligned with what I'm good at, what I enjoy, and the kind of difference I want to make in the world. And it sucked learning it that way, but I'm really, really grateful that I learned it.
How do you, so like, and if you're working with founders or entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
because I think this is one of the struggles, and I guess there's 2 points here, kind of take which one you want to start with, but is the identity. So that they've been working at a corporation for a lot of years, like that's what they're known for. That's their identity. And they feel they have to, kind of, well, that's all I can do. And
Yeah.
the second thing is, and I see this a lot of folks kind of in your position, right? Is they start something because they do have that skill set. They're like, well, this is the easiest thing to get me out of corporate America. Let me just start whatever. And then unfortunately, they're not happy with it. So take it from whatever angle. We can go into both of those, but how do you kind of work with your clients or folks that you talk with around both of those things?
Those are really good questions. And I do think, look, I think it takes some time and it takes some courage to be able to say, hey, yeah, I can make money at this thing, but that's not what I feel is sort of my soul's purpose and what I really enjoy. So one of the things that I think is that I say often is just because it's a smart business choice doesn't mean it's the right one for you. So you really do have to pay attention to, okay, what is the work that I do that it almost feels a little bit like criminal, that it feels so freaking easy, right? It's the stuff where it lights you up, you enjoy it, you love doing it, rather than the stuff that someone is like, no, this is the smart move. You can make money doing this. And what I think is really interesting is in all my experience working with entrepreneurs, dude, you can build an incredibly successful business doing literally anything. Like that is one of the things that I loved about when I started my career. I started in B2B sales. It would always fascinate me talking to a new company, and you'd realize that there's a gazillion ways to make a buck, and not just a buck, but like a lot of them. And you can build something that feels right for you. You just have to have the courage to do it and sort of the grit to figure out how to do it. And so what I really encourage people is to figure out, like, okay, if you are in that corporate job and you're thinking about, leaving, and you're thinking about this sort of this next phase, think about in your work, what are those moments, those projects, those experiences that you've had that deliver real value, but that are just plain old fun. It's this stuff where you're like, oh my God, if I could do this all day, I would pay someone else. And because I guarantee there's a business there. You might have to get creative in figuring out how to make it and how to kind of put it together, but you can lean into the things that are sort of your unique skill set, your unique way of delivering value or kind of energy to people, and and making money doing it. And one of the things that I think is interesting for me is, like I said, dude, I've made literally every mistake that a person could possibly make in life. I mean, truly. And I've learned it all the hard way. And I've spent an inordinate amount of time trying to learn from those lessons and a lot of reflection. And now I do kind of growth strategy coaching for entrepreneurs. And what makes me really good at being a coach is the fact that I've screwed up so many times and I've learned so many lessons as a result. And so it makes me particularly good at noticing when someone is not on the right path for them, or helping talk them through, like, how do they navigate some of these really tough challenges in their business, but also in their lives. And so that, that's not going to be right for everybody, but it is really particular to me and to who I am and my journey in life. And now I can turn, kind of terrible experiences that I've gone through into really helpful, valuable insights and resources for the people that I serve.
Well, and you bring up a good point too. I want to underscore, and it goes back kind of the identity piece is like, as we mentioned earlier, it's not just about, what do you do well today? Let's just keep doing that. Like what, because I find this like, and this is probably, you probably see this with your friends as well. Like I see this too, is like, they love something, they love gardening, but they don't want to tell anyone they love gardening because it's going to shake their identity up and that people are going to look at them weird and different. But that might be the thing that they really should be, but they might not start a business at it right away, but it's something they may spend more time, or they should spend more time in,
What a good way to bring this up. I think you're spot on, right? It's the identity thing, I think is really interesting. It's and I've seen people make terrible decisions because of that. And also, I don't know, just downright fascinating ones. I have a client who I've been working, he and his wife are business partners, and I've been working with them for a few years now. And when we first started working together, they talked about how there's lots of acquisitions happening in their industry, and they have a number in their head that if they get offered that number, they're going to sell. And within, I don't know, 7-8 months of us working together, they got the number. And they're telling me that they got the number, and we're on the call, and I just started laughing. My client is like, Kasey, why are you smirking at this? And I was like, because I can tell you're not going to take the number. And I was like, because it's not about the number. I was like, you're not ready. Like, your identity is being the founder and CEO of this very successful business, and you haven't figured out what comes next yet. So you're not ready to take that number and like leap into whatever that next chapter is. And I was like, what the work we need to do is figure out what is the next chapter. So when you get the now new number, because you will, that you'll actually be ready to take it. And they were like, oh my God, you're right. And they were like, yeah, we totally could take it. It would be life-changing. Our 3 girls would be set up. Our lives would be set up, but we're not ready because we haven't decided on what comes next. And so there's something about the identity, and also that the like aspirational identity. We got to know where we want to go, so that when we have the opportunity to get there, we can seize it.
Yeah. And well, this kind of dovetails into something else I want to talk about, but you had tweeted something out, like the average age of a successful entrepreneur starts at about 42.
And by the way, I'm out of date. Someone asked me where I found that, and it's a Harvard business review statistic. And so I went and looked it up, and they've updated it's 45. So even better.
Okay. Awesome. Well, but going back to what we're talking about, and this is where I kind of want to get your thoughts on, is because you do get folks that say, all right, Kasey, all right, Brian, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Now we've given some ideas, but like, do you encourage folks that let's assume most people are working corporate America job?
Yeah.
Do you assume or encourage them to just start something on the side? Like just as a hobby, not even think about it like a business, and even see if they like it first. Or
100%.
okay.
100%. Don't go all in into something that you haven't kind of tested, validated. It's interesting. Really good friend of mine, Matt Doan, he specifically works with people that are super successful in corporate America and want to leave. They're miserable, right? And the big thing that he and I had this is like very good timing. He and I had a call this morning and we were just kind of talking and he was like, oh, he said, when we work together, he said, there's kind of a 3-step process. And he was like, the first 2 steps are just getting your mind right and really identifying that aspirational identity and stepping into that before you ever start trying to do the business. Because if you haven't gotten in the right headspace of where you want to go and who you need to become in order to get there, you'll grasp at things that don't ultimately serve you. And the other thing that's interesting, because I've had this conversation a lot, and this is my story. I know a lot of people that were sort of thrust into entrepreneurship. I became an entrepreneur because the startup I was working for ran out of money, as they are likely to do. And so I didn't have a plan. I just jumped right in and I had a lot of really good early success. But that meant that I was a ship without a rudder. It meant that, yeah, I had that wind at my back. But I didn't know how to direct it and I didn't know where I was going. And I think that's why it was so easy for me to be like, oh, everyone's telling me I should start an agency. Okay, I'll do that. And so if you're in kind of corporate America and you're thinking about this next phase, taking the time to get clear on, I don't know, what would a perfect day look like for you 3 years down the line when you're your own boss and you have your own business? What are the kinds of things that you want to be doing? The kinds of people you want to be talking to, the ways that you want to show up in the world. And then starting to work your way back, kind of reverse engineer that. And there's a great exercise. I first heard about this in an interview between Debbie Millman and Tim Ferriss. And I think she calls it like her 10-year plan or something like that, where you write a short story. And I, by the way, I have every client do this in my cohort, kind of teaching people personal brand stuff. This is like the first thing I tell people to do. You write a short story that's a day in your life in 10 years. And you get super detailed. Like it starts the moment you wake up in the morning. How do you wake up? What kind of bed are you in? What sheets are on that bed? Who's lying next to you? Like, what do you do throughout the day? Who do you hang out with? What clothes do you wear? What food do you eat? Like, get super freaking detailed. And you also want to think about, like, how do I show up in the world? Like, how do I interact with people? If you've got kids, like, what kind of a parent am I? What kind of a relationship do I have with them? Like, and get really, really clear on those things. And then you start to kind of reverse engineer, okay, what does future me do that I don't do?
Right.
What does future me stop doing that I still do? And how do I start putting these things into place? But I really agree with you. Like, identity really does need to come first. Otherwise, it's way too freaking easy to wind up full speed ahead in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Well, even on the 10-year story, which I really like that,
Oh, it's such a cool exercise to do. It's really fun.
is and this the one word I was thinking about as you said that is prioritization. Because that can, yeah, because I find this, and I've probably got, I probably did this early on as well, but I find that most people, when, it's kind of like I use the marathon as an example. People don't want to run the marathon. They want to finish the marathon, right? Like, so everyone's always thinking about standing on the podium versus all the work that has to happen. And that's always the encouragement I give. I was like, well, you want to do X. Can you dedicate 1 hour this week to do it?
Yeah,
Because if you can't even dedicate an hour, how are you going to do that for a full-time gig?
absolutely.
Where the prioritization comes in. Would you agree?
Yeah, and to your earlier point, the intrinsic interest. Like, dude, you can start a million different kinds of businesses, but if you don't have like a genuine curiosity about that thing, it's going to be a real freaking slog, and it's going to start to eat away at you. And to go back to what we were talking about before, after I had crazy intense burnout, I wound up having a ton of conversations with people about burnout. And what I've learned is that burnout does not come from working too hard. When you're doing something you freaking love, working hard, yeah, okay, you need to rest and all the rest. But burnout doesn't come from that. Burnout comes from working too hard on the wrong thing, from working too hard on things that drain you and suck the soul out of you. And the problem with, if you have a real long career in corporate America, you probably have gotten really good at doing stuff that you don't love. And that can be very enticing when you think about doing your own thing, but that's not why you go out on your own. You go out on your own for something better, something more kind of holistically for you and the kind of life you want to lead. And if you don't take the time to figure out what that is, you're just going to find yourself in another day job. It's just one where you don't have the security and the safety that you do where someone else is paying your paycheck.
Well, and it's as you're saying that, it kind of got me thinking. I remember thinking about this a while ago, is even leaving the day job. You don't even have to leave the day job. But I think you had mentioned this earlier. Like, let's say you're in sales as an example, but
Yeah.
you really want to be in a marketing role or engineering. I think that goes back to the identity. It's like, well, I have the sales experience. I'm going to stay in that versus, well, why don't I learn to code for 2 years
Yeah,
and then try to get an engineering job? I still might work. I don't work for myself. I work for a corporation, but now I'm doing something totally different. And I think it's a
absolutely.
very small amount of people that will be willing to do that. Uh,
And sometimes it means taking a small step back, but in order for you to take a big leap forward. And I started my career in B2B sales, and I was in that for, I don't know, 7 years, 6 or 7 years, and didn't love it, but I didn't know anything different. I mean, I went to a really nerdy college, so when I got out of college, I had like no clue what you could do for a living, let alone what I wanted to do. And I love my parents, but my parents treated me like a 40-year-old when I was 8, so I got zero guidance from them. And so I was like, I just had no clue. And it was when I was in sales that I started to think, I don't know if this is what I want to do. And I annoyed the hell out of my boss because I was constantly like, how do I do more of this and less of that? And he found out that there was and I was at a sizable startup, but still a startup. And they were looking for a field marketing manager. And they came to me, and it was really, they were talking with my boss, and he was like, I think you need to talk to Kasey. And I made the leap from sales to marketing, and it was really scary at the time. Completely changed my life, my trajectory. It was like a 10 times better fit for me. And I don't know that I would have figured that out on my own, but the fact that I was constantly talking to someone, talking to a leader, a mentor, about what I loved about my job, what I hated about it, that when this came up, he was like he connected the dots. And I remember too, years later, he and I were talking, and I was like, I said something about how he's just an amazing boss. And he was like, I'm not really that great of a boss, Kasey. And I was like, yeah, no, look at what you did for me. And he was like, he was like, do you understand? He was like, I didn't do that for everybody. He was like, you were the only person that was constantly in my ear being like, I don't like this. I want more of this other thing. How do I do that? And he was like, you made it really easy to advocate for you. And I didn't do that intentionally. I was just kind of a pain in the butt. So
you find that the sales skills though helped you on the marketing front, like having the
Lord.
combination, right?
Oh my God, it's huge. And it made me really insecure on the marketing side for a while because I had zero professional training. I figured it all out on my own. But it's why I am as valuable as I am to startups and to small businesses and founders, because I understand the connection point between marketing and revenue, I think, better than most people. That it really is my sweet spot. And particularly early on in my marketing career, I would employ sales development, like prospecting strategies in marketing campaigns that I do. And they worked like it was like a gold mine. And no one did that kind of stuff. I mean, way back when, this is really dating me, before things like automation on LinkedIn were common, I would do events for some of my startup clients, and we'd send automated messages on LinkedIn from the CEO's account inviting people to the events. And I'm not exaggerating. Like, I had one where we had a list of 550 people. We got 217 people to register for the event. Like, that's nuts. And it's really just because I was using my sales brain in a marketing campaign. And so it led to a lot of fun little intersections. And so truly, like, I think when you do make these switches, so let's say that person, that hypothetical you were talking about, someone who's in sales who then winds up getting into, being a coder or an engineer, oh my goodness, they're going to understand like user experience and customer experience and how to drive revenue through the product better than someone who doesn't have that experience. And it can be this huge differentiator and value add.
Can I go back to, you mentioned marketing and revenue?
Yeah.
Can I just pick your brain on that even further?
Totally.
Tell me more about like what you're seeing in the marketplace today of how that relates together. Like what entrepreneurs, people that are trying to grow a business, what they should be thinking about as it relates to kind of marketing influencing revenue.
So in general, I think people really need to think about a couple things. One, you need to think about customer experience starts with marketing. The first moment somebody sees your brand, hears about your company, whatever it is, that is the first time they're getting a feeling. And I don't care what you do. I don't care what your company does. If you've got a tech company, you've got at least a few dozen. If you have a service-based business, you probably have hundreds, more likely thousands of competitors who do basically the same thing that you do. Sorry, no one's really that unique. No business is really that unique. That's very rare. So that means that what is going to be your differentiator is the experience that you give people while you deliver those results. And so you need to really think about what kind of experience you want to deliver. I love the Maya Angelou quote where she says, no one's going to remember what you said. They're not going to remember what you did. They're going to remember how you made them feel. And so if you can really decide for yourself, like, how do I want to make my customers feel while I deliver these results, everything becomes much clearer and it becomes much simpler. The other thing I will say, and I am very biased in this because this is not everything that I work on with clients, but it's a big part. Personal brand is friggin' everything. And if you are not putting intention into building your personal brand, you are leaving serious money on the table. And people look at social media and they're like, oh, it's so noisy. How am I ever going to break through the noise? Let's be clear. Both Twitter and LinkedIn, only 1% of users actually create content on an even semi-regular basis. Only 1%. So if you actually just commit to creating content a few times a week, engaging with some other folks, you are instantly in the 1% of those platforms. You learn how to do it well. You get a little bit more consistent. So it's not just a few times a week, but it's every day. You are suddenly in the 0.1%. And it is a phenomenal differentiator. And it's a really, really easy way to attract. I'm lying. It's not easy. It's not easy. I didn't say that. It's a simple way. It's a simple way to attract your customers, to attract podcast opportunities, to attract ideal job candidates, and also to really build a network where this is the other thing. If you've been in corporate America your whole life and you change to entrepreneurship, I promise you, most of your friends will not understand what the hell you're doing. They will think you're kind of crazy and it will feel really lonely. So sooner rather than later, start to build your sort of inner circle of fellow entrepreneurs. And one of the easiest and most, I know it's so nerdy that I'm even going to say this, but one of the most fun ways to do it is on social media.
And if I recall, you kind of changed more toward a storytelling approach recently, and that's kind of what propelled you forward. Is that
Oh,
accurate?
dude. When I first started creating content online, I think I told stories because had no clue what I was doing. And I just did whatever I sort of felt like doing, and it was fun and it really worked. And I had some really early success. And the longer I went on, I kept looking at what everybody else was doing and studying all the recommendations and all this. And everyone is like, oh, you do these tactical, like how-to posts. And I would try to do them and they would bomb. They would just bomb. I mean, it's very obvious just talking to me. It's not how I communicate, right? Like how I communicate is I tell stories. Brevity is not my strong suit. And, like I've said, my superpower is the fact that I've literally made every mistake under the sun and I've learned from them. And I use those lessons and those learnings to kind of help the people I work with. And so creating these like tactical how-to posts, like it's not authentic. And so I've started telling stories from my life, from the lives of, the clients that I work with. It's so much more fun for me because it feels so much more real and it really works. And it's leading to, tons of new business for me, lots of connection, lots of friendships, lots of opportunities. And truly, like, it feels easier and it feels more personally rewarding because it is truly coming from my heart, not me, I don't know, trying to game the algorithm or whatever the hell.
Well, and I mean, that's one of the reasons I was following you and reached out to have you on here because I'm kind of similar in that approach of like I've been blogging for a lot of years. But I think I got to a point where I was like trying to like, oh, let me use this hook or whatever. And then I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
that's not me. I was like, I want to put podcast posts out there. I want to put my blog articles. I want to put if something's random on my mind that's obscure,
Yeah.
mention it. Because I'll
Yes.
mention it to my friends, I might as well mention online. So it's like having I like how you put it, but like having the leap of faith of like, I'm just gonna be myself, like how I would act with my friends, that's how I should talk online.
100%. And this is why, so I do like 3 times a year, I do these cohorts with a business partner, Erica Schneider, where we teach entrepreneurs kind of how to grow online so that it grows their business. And we spent a lot of time talking about the fact that the whole concept of personal brand felt icky. And we really hated that term. And so we call it personal platform, where it's like, no, it's not about commoditizing you as a human. Yeah, you want to present content in a way that grabs the attention of your kind of dream customer, but you also want to do it in a really authentic way. And so, yeah, sometimes that means talking about this weird idea you have or this, I don't know, cool experience you had, because it makes you more human. And it's interesting. It's like I've been talking a lot more about kind of personal stuff. And you wouldn't think it, but genuinely, like I did a post 2 days ago about my relationship. Like we just got married 2 weeks ago. And I did this long post about how, we have an incredible relationship, but we were a hot freaking mess for years first. I mean, we are two fiery humans and we like our relationship matched that for sure. And I wrote about the fact that, ultimately we got couples counseling and it taught us all of these things. And it was like very personal. I had two people, really, really dream prospects, book calls to talk because of that. Entrepreneurs who were like, I love your energy. I love your stories. Like this vibes with me. Let's talk about business, even though that post had literally nothing to do with business.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. But again, you're just telling your story. It's not like
Yeah.
you're trying to critique
No,
and like, oh, let me just kind of curve around the corner here to get this
no.
algorithm
I
today.
mean, it was literally that like I got married 2 weeks ago and I want to talk about like nothing but my relationship. And so I was like, and I've been thinking a lot about how we managed to get to where we are. And I know that I wish that a few years ago I had seen a story of like you can have a really dramatic, fiery mess of a relationship and you two can build something incredible together. I promise it is possible. Here's how we did it. Like that would have been amazing for me to see a few years ago.
Well, it goes back to even from a sales side, like people want to do business with who they like, trust, and respect. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
They want something that's authentic and hey, like you're actually living a life. You're not just like sitting at the computer screen for 24 hours, just, trying to think up these things. Like you're actually
Yeah.
living, which is important.
Yeah. And we connect through stories, right? And we might get value out of those tactical posts. We might learn something new, but I'll be honest, when I read one of those, I very rarely remember who wrote it. But when I see those stories, dude, I remember that. And it becomes very easy to then go down the rabbit hole of like really learning about that person, becoming like genuine friends and building those relationships. And if you talk to anybody who puts stuff online and plays that game, and you ask them what is the most kind of life-changing part about it, even the ones who've made a ton of money doing it, they'll be like, oh, it's the relationships. And you don't build those if you are showing up as like a figment of your own imagination or a character.
Yeah.
That only happens when you are there and you are real. And I'll be honest, it's scary. And it's scarier doing that than doing the tactical stuff. But you face those fears every single day. And then you start to get really freaking courageous in the rest of your life.
Well, and you shared something recently. I want to maybe take an off ramp to another topic because it's
Yeah.
something I've been thinking about for several weeks now where I really beat myself up. Like I'm my own worst critic in my head. And I'm working hard on that though, to really have the awareness around it. But you said something where you called, you want to be your own personal hype woman and like actually like love yourself and say those nice things. And it got me thinking, I was like, man, that's something I really want to bring up with you. Of like, how have you always talking kindly to yourself? And if you haven't, how have you learned to
God, I
talk?
used to be the meanest freaking person to myself. Like, genuinely, my default was really self-deprecating humor. And to the point where I always thought that, like, oh, people would laugh. And then people who knew me well, I mean, there are multiple people that eventually would be like, kind of call me out of like, hey, it's like really concerning. Like, I used to be so incredibly awful to myself. Um, and it's been a long road to figure out kind of how not to be, and it takes time. Um, but there's a few things. One, this is a very helpful one. I named my inner critic. Don't tell my mother, it's my mother's name. Because guess what? That's where I learned it. And that really helped separate like the true me and that part of me. And it made it much easier when, like, I don't know, I'm thinking something really awful to myself. And I'd be like, all right, Cody, I don't want to listen to your shit right now. Like, that we don't have time for this. You're like, go, go tell someone who cares, and it made it easier for me to kind of like make a joke out of it with myself. But I think the big thing is I started to get more in a habit of catching myself when I was doing it and and forcing myself to talk to me the way I would talk to like a child that I love. And PS, not to get too kind of, I don't know, psychological with you, but it really is. It's an inner child thing, and it's a childhood kind of wound that we were sort of taught to, I don't know, that we're not good enough just as we are, and that we have to always be striving and proving ourselves. And so, there's some silly things, and I promise you'll feel so dumb and embarrassed when you do it, but you'll also feel embarrassed that it totally works. Of like, legit, talk to yourself in the mirror and give yourself like the most epic level like pep talk, and talk to yourself the way you would talk to like a little kid, of like cheer yourself on. There's also an exercise that I've done that I think can be really helpful, of like, if you think back to And there are people who can take you through this process, and it helps not doing it totally on your own. But if you think about sort of the emotion that kind of plagues you, for me, it was sort of anxiety. And I worked with someone who they do this thing where they help you go back in your memory and try to remember the very first moment that you felt that feeling. And then imagine that you today kind of goes back and can have a conversation with that version of you, that kid of you. And what would you tell 3, 4, 5-year-old you in that moment when you're feeling that feeling? And if you can write those things down, and then every time you feel that feeling, stop yourself and give yourself that pep talk. And like, I know it sounds weird and kind of lame. It totally works. Yeah. It totally works. It won't happen overnight, but genuinely, I mean, it was probably 2.5, 3 years ago that I was still so incredibly mean to myself. And now, like, I'm my own biggest cheerleader. And it has transformed my relationships. It's transformed how I show up online, and it's transformed the like energy that I bring to my life.
Wow. Yeah. It's incredible. Just even like I said, I've been just toying with it more recently, and it's kind of cool. It is kind of weird. Like actually, I don't mind sharing this, like walking down my hall here, coming to the podcast interview. And I said to myself, I'm like, love you, dude. Proud of what you've been doing.
Oh, yeah,
and
I love that.
it was weird saying it, but like, it was something where I have to, like I said, start kind of coaching, cheerleading on myself, because I do get so beat up about, oh, I didn't do this interview well, or I should have done that better, or whatever. And I'm like, why, dude? It's like.
And what are you comparing yourself to? So there's, I don't know if you've ever read any of the books by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. Benjamin Hardy, he's like a huge, like he blew up on Medium, and then he wrote Your Personality Isn't Permanent, I think was his first book. And Dan Sullivan is the founder and CEO of Strategic Coach. It's like one of the biggest like entrepreneur coaching programs. And so they are writing all these books together. And there's a great one called The Gap and the Gain. And in it, they talk about, oftentimes, especially when we're really driven, we're always looking like at the horizon, and we're like, I'm going there. But guess what? You keep moving forward, the horizon just keeps moving. Like, you're never going to catch it. And so instead of always looking at like, where are you going? You've got to look back and recognize where you've come from and what you've managed to do. And so instead of focusing on the gap between where you are and where you want to be, because by the way, the more you achieve, you're just going to expand what you want. Look at what you've done. And I don't think we're good at that, of being like, you look back on your trajectory and be like, oh my God, you think about the things that I've achieved and how far I've come. And yeah, I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I also made a lot of friends, a lot of amazing memories. I've achieved things that I never thought were possible. And I think we can do a way better job of celebrating like what we've done. And also, because here's the other thing. If you are a giver, it's hard to do this for ourselves. So also think, the people around us, when they see us constantly focusing on our lack and what we are not and where we are failing, what do they do for themselves then? Do you think that, like, and I don't have kids, but I'm sure if your kid, and let's be real, I was talking about my mom. I learned to be really critical and hard on myself because that's how my mom is with herself. Like, that's the model. And if she had modeled for me her really freaking loving herself and embracing what an amazing freaking woman she was, and still striving for more, like, how that could have changed my worldview and how I looked at like how I was going to navigate the world.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I think about this, I have an 11-year-old, and I think about how I talk to him, like trying to uplift him as much as possible, tell him I'm proud of him, because I understand, and a part it's a well, one I am, but like partly it's a psychology game. It's the more I tell him he did a great job, he's going to want
He
to.
wants to do a great job. Yeah.
And if I keep, beating him up over it, like, hey, you're not good enough, because that's how I was as a kid.
Yeah.
I'm not saying my parents didn't say I was good enough, but it was, I didn't get the attention I thought I deserved. I felt kind of small, unheard, unseen type of thing. So going back to kind of maybe what you experienced as a child, I'm not sure, but like, I didn't want that experience for him.
Exactly. Exactly. And let's be real, like, our parents did a bang up job given the toolkit they were given from their parents. So there's only love and compassion for them. But I think we can realize that, our words, and not just our words, but sort of our energy has power, and the people around us soak it up. And if you are always cruel to yourself, P.S., it's going to be way easier for other people to be cruel to you. And that is a big part of my story. But it also encourages, it makes it hard for other people to love themselves in your inner circle, in your orbit. And not just kids, but your partner, your friends, people you work with.
Yeah, that's a great point. Now we can talk all day about this stuff. I want to kind of be sensitive to time and finish up on one thing, because you mentioned Erica earlier, and I actually I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because we've talked about a few times around building connections online and finding like a new group of people. And if I recall, in fact checking on this, you started this business with her, but you never met her in person, right?
We started this business together. We decided to start the business. I think we just looked it up yesterday, on October 10th, 2022.
Okay.
I met her in person for the first time like a month ago.
Yeah.
And it was only because we really needed pictures taken together for stuff that we were promoting. P.S. The pictures were terrible, but that's a whole other thing. And that's what's incredible. Through all the kind of being active on social media, I have made incredibly close friends. One of my dearest friends, okay, so he's out by you, not North Carolina, South Carolina. Like legit, if Walker and I lived anywhere close to each other, he would be on my top 3 people that I would call to bail me out of jail if I got arrested. But I've literally never met him in person. And it's crazy. Like he is one of my closest, dearest friends. I love this man. Like he is a mentor. He calls me a mentor. Like we are so close. Never met him in person. And that's really cool and kind of nerdy. I get it, but it's really amazing to build these incredible relationships with people, simply because you connect and you have things in common and you support each other. Being in person, eventually it'll happen and it'll be amazing, but it doesn't have to, which is cool.
How did you and Erica initially meet?
So we got connected through kind of a mutual friend who I also have never met in person. And we had kind of connected, but we hadn't really hit it off. And then we both got really annoyed at the same thing on Twitter. And so we wound up in the DMs being like, "This is so annoying. We should have a call where we bitch about this." And we got on the call and we were just kind of shooting the shit. And she was like, "Oh, Maven, the cohort learning platform." She was like, "Maven wants me to do a course on personal branding, and I keep trying to get started and I'm just not making any progress." And I was like, "That's interesting. They've reached out to me about the exact same thing, and I'm also not making any progress." And we were like, "Should we do it together?" We're like, "Okay." And I think 3 days later, we had a landing page up and we started selling it, and we did our first cohort like 5 weeks later. And now we have like a whole business and we're super close friends, and it's been kind of a wild ride. But this is the other thing that I will say, like the way you build those relationships via social media is you get off of social media. Like, yes, you still foster that relationship because you engage with their content and all the rest, but it's about getting on a call and just connecting like people.
You mentioned Maven. I just heard of that the other day for the first time. Is that a cool? You like that platform?
I do. It's and we owe them a lot because we wouldn't have wound up doing this if it weren't for Maven. And I think what they're doing is cool because one of the co-founders is and I'm totally going to I'm blanking on his name, but he was one of the co-founders of Coursera.
Oh,
And
okay.
he basically realized that like digital courses have a terrible completion rate. So people buy them and then don't take them, or they'll go through the first two lessons and they don't finish. So Maven is all cohort based learning. And I think the team behind it is incredibly impressive, really heartfelt, really smart, just really wonderful people. And I think they've done a phenomenal job of helping people create really wonderful courses on the platform, and they make it super easy to start. And so I really do recommend, like, if there's a thing you want to learn, go look on Maven. They now have so many amazing courses on the platform. I guarantee you'll find something that teaches you. And because it's all cohort based, it's a phenomenal way to start to build those connections of people who are learning the same thing, interested in the same thing. And it's a really, really cool way to kind of build your community. And then if you create courses there, you build that community while also making money, which is kind of magical, I think.
So is the Power Your Platform cohort, is that on Maven?
It's not going to be on Maven. We've moved off of Maven.
Okay.
They take a 10% cut,
Okay.
and they don't do as much as you would hope to drive traffic to your course. But I think if you are kind of just getting started, they make it so easy. Like so easy. All of the tech is like built into it. It makes it really simple to do it. It's kind of like what I would say like Gumroad, but for cohort-based learning, where like, yeah, okay, they take a bit of a cut, but it's so easy to get started and it's so easy to do it that if you are new to it, start there. It will 100% be worth it, because figuring out all the tech and all the other stuff when you're just getting started is like so hard and kind of intimidating and expensive.
Yeah, you're right about that. So what
Yeah.
what can people expect? The Power Your Platform, is that your cohort right now that's going on, or do you have
So it hasn't started yet. We're going to launch at the end of this month, and the cohort will go through November, and the first week of December we'll take the week off for Thanksgiving. And it really is. It's actually going to be called Platform Launchpad,
a
and it's really, really focused on not just how do you build kind of an effective personal platform, but how do you do it truly authentically, and real emphasis on so that it actually makes you money. And most of the content out there teaching people to do this are taught by creators. So people that are selling digital courses. And what we've seen over and over and over again is I will talk to an entrepreneur who's following like a Justin Welsh model, or Kieran Drew, or someone like that, but they're trying to sell complex consulting services to high level executives, but using the model of someone who is selling low ticket digital products. P.S. It doesn't freaking work. So our emphasis is really, how do you do it in a way that it works for you and for your business, and where you're not doing a bunch of things that just like aren't necessary. Like if you're selling consulting services and that's really what you do, you don't need a newsletter.
yeah,
You might want one, but you don't need one. And so it's really, our hope is to help guide like legit entrepreneurs on how they grow their businesses online.
that's awesome. What is there anything else on your mind? Anything you've been thinking about you want to share with the audience?
No, dude, this is like such an awesome conversation. I think the big thing is like, I'm obsessed with the fact that I'm just obsessed with storytelling right now. And when we really think about how we connect, it's through stories. It's listening to other people's stories. It's asking them really good questions so that they'll share them with us, and it's sharing our own. And so I don't know. I think that's the big thing. Like if you're thinking about the next phase of your life, whatever it is, figure out like, are there stories of other people that can help you figure out that path? Maybe it's of ideal customers, maybe it's of people who have already done it. And when you're ready, like having the guts to share your own, because really incredible things can come from that.
Awesome. Casey, this was a lot of fun.
This was a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
seriously could, this could be like a 3 hour, we could go full on Joe Rogan, like 3 hour, just like conversation, and I would have the time of my life.
Yeah, we could. There's so many angles we can pick on.
I know.
Maybe we do another one. But no, I certainly appreciate this. And you're on obviously Twitter at a better Jones. Is that how? Is that
A
the
better Jones.
better
Yeah.
Jones? And then obviously LinkedIn, your name,
Yep.
and anywhere else you're playing around
I'm
online.
also on Instagram, but I'm not super active there. I'm on TikTok. I used to be super active, and then I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have a pretty big following there, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I took a pause, but I will get back on there. So, but like, if someone wants to connect, LinkedIn and Twitter is the easiest way to get me.
Kasey, thank you again for joining. This is a lot of
Thank you so much, Brian. This was so much fun.